ask Carlo Giovannella to present the last paper, whose title is The Italian School Ecosystems 2 Years After the Lockdown, an overview on the digital shock triggered by the pandemic in the perceptions of school principals and teachers. So
this presentation is about a survey that we have performed on the Italian school learning ecosystem in order to see which has been the effect of the lockdown 2 years after the outbreak of the pandemic. And here you see more or less the timeline of the pandemic. So, the blue arrow indicates the 3 different checking points in which we performed surveys. So the first one was really during the immediate reaction of the learning ecosystem. Then we had another period of 1 year in which people in the elementary school, the students come back to school, and they had some stop and go due to the pandemic forces. And while at high school, they prefer to have student rotation, parallel blended learning, and then having the exam in place. This year, actually, most of the students come back to school, and only sometimes they use online, let's say, interaction teaching, just if it was needed, and so it's now a good moment to try to understand what was going on. Indeed, during this 2 years period, the pandemic outbreak started an innovation process that is still underway. And it will be also very important to understand how is proceeding this innovation process. Usually, innovation process are technology innovation process can be schematized in 3 phases. The first one in which people get aware about the potentiality of technologies, and of course, technologies in the standard innovation process are introduced upon agreement with the people that are going to use it. Then there is a period of adaptation, acceptance, let's say 6 to 12 months, and then in principle, there could be adoption after more or less 6 to 12 months. Actually, this is not true for the pandemic time, because at the beginning, due to the emergence, they had to, we assisted to a forced adoption of technologies, and thus the discovering and awareness phase was going in parallel with the adaptation one. And actually what's happened after more or less 1 year, we are in the presence of counteracting force that tend to, let's say, contract against the adoption of technologies. So this is the panorama within which we are trying to perform our surveys and understand what was going. Because of this difference between the standard technological innovation process and the innovation process that took place during the pandemic, the second surveys was actually intended to understand more or less which of the different set of factors that have been taken in account by several models of innovation process actually are relevant in an innovation process that took place during the pandemic. And the goal was to obtain also a model of this, of the influence of those factors. And indeed, we came with a model that's called MAITI, a model of how the factor that we took in consideration interact between them to produce an innovation process. Now the goals are a little bit different. So we have understood more or less which are the factors that are relevant for innovation process, but we had not yet an idea about the timing of the process. So this was one of the goals of this survey. Then the other goal was to understand the change that has been induced by the adoption of technologies on the learning ecosystem. And so the idea was to evaluate the present level of immaturity of the learning ecosystem. Of course, another important point was also to understand the effect of the individual well-being, not just on the system. So this was the first goal of our survey, to which participate teachers and school principals. Of course, once more, we try to understand also all these effects on maturity, the well-being will influence future intention and as well the learning process. So here you have a comparison. I do not enter into detail, but you have the comparison between the goals that we try to achieve at each surveys that we perform. So let's come back to what we are going to measure. Let's start with a quick recall to the definition of smartness, because starting from there we can understand also what well-being means. So the smartness, as maybe most of you know, is let's say a complex construct, a multi-level, multidimensional construct that we used in the past to evaluate co-evaluate, I mean, through a participatory process, the smartness of the learning ecosystem. Smartness means to satisfy, let's say, the needs of all actors that take part in a learning process. And indeed, this pyramid, SLERD pyramid, has been built on the using the level of the Maslow pyramid and also the theory of flow. And actually, you see how these two, let's say, model influences the definition of the SLERD pyramid. And what is interesting is to show that the SLERD pyramid maps, at least in the bottom levels, maps on the Eurostat definition of the smartness and well-being produced by a place on people. But the smartness or well-being of the learning ecosystem actually is something more than just the smartness or well-being of a place defined by Eurostat. And indeed, we should consider also the psychological and the well-being, that according to the self-determination theory can be defined through three axes: the autonomy, competence, and relatedness of each single people, where these three pillars can be placed in the smartness of the learning ecosystem picture. Well, you will see that more or less they interest and maps on the top of the four most top, let's say the four most top layers. So competences can be placed between challenge and satisfaction, relatedness with social interaction, and the autonomy is a product of the flow state that has to do with the self-realization. Of course, we try to also to consider other parameters. So coming back to this comparative pictures, you will see that actually the smartness learning ecosystem is an integration of the smartness defined by Eurostat for a place, plus the individual well-being that can be derived considering all these factors. Of course, this is not enough to characterize the learning ecosystem, because you have to consider that the parameter is supported by a techno infrastructure, and the techno infrastructure can be evaluated in a different way. Also, you should consider what is called immaturity. And the immaturity took in consideration, of course, the technological infrastructure in terms of resource, but also the digital competences that are available in the environment. And finally, all the organizational factors, without which, of course, resources and competence are nothing, because if the processes are not organized in a due way, of course, they do not produce relevant results. Here you can see, I do not enter into detail, you can find it on the paper, but here you can see the factors that we could took in consideration in our surveys concerning resources, organizational factors, competences, and of course, the effect that all this had on the learning process. This can be compared to the selfie tool that has been developed by the European Union. Maybe you will hear about this evening in open debate, and that has been provided to school to self-evaluate as far as the digital environment is concerned. So coming to the results, to the surveys and to the results, here you have a picture of the summarize the questionnaire that was composed by 6 sections, 81 questions in 6 different, of course, sections. The questionnaire has been answered by 231 teachers distributed in all the different school level, and 153 participants. Almost 80% were female. And this is perfectly in line with the statistic of the Italian learning ecosystem, so that the sample was quite good. So let's go to the results. The first one, that we'll deal is the evaluation of the immaturity. And you will see here that the teachers, these are the results of the teacher, are providing a value that are sufficient. So it's quite good considering the overall situation. This is an average result on all the learning, let's say the school, Italian school. So it's not only for particular specialized school. So it could be considered more or less a good result. But you will see also that the school principal are even more generous with the evaluation of the learning, the immaturity of the learning ecosystem. You will see that they are particularly generous with, of course, the factors that are of their own responsibility. For example, the school technology adequacy, all the organizational factors, and of course, the quality of continuous training. All this depends strongly on the decision of the principal, so that's why probably they provide a much better score for that. What is interesting is that if you make an average of all these parameters, you get a value that is not far. It's compared very well with the direct evaluation of immaturity. You can ask to evaluate the immaturity, you get these results. If you just average all those the factors, you get a result that is very similar. So the other important things is that how those factors are related, and these are the causal network representation of those the factor that you have seen here. So what is interesting is that, of course, all the school infrastructure are at the top of the causal network. And while, for example, the competences, the teacher competence go directly to influence directly this, the immaturity of the school, while the competences of the students do not influence directly the maturity of the school, but the capability of the students to be well, let's say, adequately let's say that could be adequately equipped with the technologies. So, for example, this has to do with the BYOD model. And of course, you see that all the organizational factors are very important. They are in between the technologies and the achievement of the immaturity level. So you see that the organizational factor mediate the relevance of infrastructure. Here you can see the variation that we observed in 2 years, and you see that we observed the positive variation. So this is the effect, let's say, of the pandemic in some sense, but also we have some warning, because, for example, after 1 year, these results are compared with what we got in 2021. Some parameter try to come back. So operational assistance and cohesion and collaboration, that was very high during the pandemic, increased very much between 2020 and 2021, and now it's getting a little bit worse with coming back in the classroom. So,
sorry, Carlo, can I ask you to go to the conclusion, because we are
I'll show you. Okay, I just because it's quite important, just to show you the measure of. I will skip the effect of the learning process, that nevertheless I would like to mention that it was positive, as you can see, and of course you have the result in the paper. And you see that I would like to show you the evaluation of the personal well-being. And you see that here that the personal well-being increased. So at least we have been listening about a lot of discussion about the well-being of students. Here we are focused on the well-being of teachers and school principal. And both were very positive, and those the increase of well-being of school principal was even larger than that of the teachers. And also, in general, the individual immaturity was increasing during these 2 years. So, shortly on the innovation process, we were very surprised. We asked directly how the innovation process developed. And we were very surprising that actually the distance between the discovering and awareness, adaptation, and acceptance of the technology and the final adoption was very, very short. Let's say in 5 days, more or less. So it means that actually, if the technologies are well designed for a very have been tested by a huge amount of people, then they are immediately accepted. Just an example, Zoom that we are using here. So, summary: we have observed a positive effect of the digital shock on some phases of the immaturity of the learning ecosystem. Positive effect on individual well-being and the immaturity of principal and teachers. positive effect also or some aspect of the learning process. Although, as I mentioned, we have already some warning that indicates the effect of the counteracting force. Finally, the innovation process was very, very rapid. I do not go through the future intention, but you have everything in the paper. So thanks for your attention.
There is probably time for just one question, if there is any question from the audience.
Yes, I have a question, please, Francesca.
Yeah, please go ahead.
If I can ask, Carlo, so thank you for your presentation. I have a question about maintenance. Some researcher like Vincel showed that in innovation, the most important is system maintenance, which is often overlooked. In your research, you mentioned the question of technical assistance to teachers, I mean, but in maintenance, there is also other points like to the extent to which systems are properly maintained and function to provide the best experience to teachers. Do you can you show in your research some points about that or not?
Okay, if you well understood, you are referring to this factor, operational assistance, right? So yes. This is the position in the causal network. So you will see that this is the school connectivity. This is the student technological adequacy, and this is the school technological adequacy. So you see that, of course, these two elements need the operational assistance. Without operational assistance, you cannot proceed on in the causal network. So this is a very relevant factor. But this is not just to maintain the equipment, it's to assist the teachers to use equipment for any problem that they may have.
Okay.
And actually, this is very relevant factor. And of course, then you have the quality of training, the sharing of best practice, etc. So you see, overall, it's a very important factor that is connecting the technological area to the other organizational factors.
Okay, thank you.